So the question I'd like you to turn your attention to begin with, please, is how evolution has shaped perception. More specifically, how evolution has shaped perception in animals. So one simple model for animal behavior is that over evolutionary time, acting on particular stimulus has been correlated to adaptive outcomes. And by adaptive outcomes, I mean any important life history decisions the animal might face, such as mate selection or habitat selection, that confer some reproductive success. So one problem, however, due to the rapid and diverse ways which we're altering the environment as human beings, some of these cues which animals depend on are no longer reliable, is that they're becoming decoupled from their expected evolutionary outcomes. This is what we refer to as an evolutionary trap. Now this might be made clear by way of an example. One of my favorites is that of the Australian Jewel Beetle, pictured on the screen there. So the male Australian Jewel Beetles select their female mates on the basis of the females being brown, dimpled, and shiny. Now the problem being is that the other things in the Australian outback, which are brown, dimpled, and shiny, are discarded beer bottles. And this caused quite the ecological catastrophe in the early 80s, as the males were actually preferentially mating with the beer bottles instead of females. So this led to rapid population declines. So what we're interested in doing mathematically is trying to model which species may be the most susceptible to evolutionary traps, and furthermore, what manner of conservation efforts may be the most effective in addressing this emerging issue. Now to talk about the math briefly. I'd like to continue with the example of the Australian Jewel Beetle. Our framework that we're developing can be applied much more broadly, but this is a convenient example for discussion's sake. So in the Australian outback, we have female beetles, or what we'll refer to as real signals. We also have some distribution of beer bottles in the environment, let's say, or trap signals. Now, if we know something about the spatial distribution of those items, or the frequency which they appear, we can stitch those two things together mathematically to describe what the world looks like through the eyes of the beetle. That is what it perceives as potential mates. And the problem is that it can't distinguish, as all that it sees is brown, dimpled, and shiny. Now, when a male encounters what it perceives to be a potential mate, it's faced with a decision, yes or no. And it's free to pass up the opportunity to mate. However, it does so indefinitely at great risk to itself, because life is short and it best find a mate at some point. However, if it does choose to mate with that potential partner it happens across, one of two realities will manifest itself. Either that potential mate was indeed a female, in which case the male beetle will have some manner of reproductive success, or that potential mate turned out to be a beer bottle, in which case it's bad news for the beetle. The question that we're trying to answer mathematically is how exactly is the best way to respond? What constitutes an optimal response? So one set of simulations that we run is in the absence of any evolutionary traps. So there's only real female beetles in the environment. Then the best strategy corresponds to waiting around and being a little picky until you happen across what you perceive to be the most fertile or the most healthy female mate. The optimal strategy is radically different, however, if we include evolutionary traps in the environment. So if we litter some beer bottles in the environment in our simulation, what we see to be the optimal strategy is no longer to opt for the highest quality mate, it's to opt for the most reliable mate. So the strategy goes something like, wait around until you encounter the signal which you believe is most closely correlated with a real female, even if it's not the best mate choice. So the discrepancy between these two strategies highlights why evolutionary traps are an emerging concern in conservation ecology. It's our hope with modeling efforts such as these that we can gain further insight into this emerging issue. Thank you very much.